in addition to simply making a game, I'm trying to work out how I work these days after having had a couple of years where I couldn't really work much. I'm re-evaluating what is my process, what tools do I want to use, and yeah, in any traditional medium, like you have this concept of an old master, like someone who's been doing it for 50, 60 years and is really knows their tools, and we don't really have that in digital media. Partly, I was going to say partly because it's a newer media, but it's 2023 now, and computers are from where 1970s, more or less. That's, you can be working in computers for 50 something years. But no one's been working on the same computers for 50 years, and it's not looking I'd really like to just settle, get a technology that works and not keep fucking breaking it. And it's great to have increased storage, increased processing speed, all that, great, but why does the visual user interface that I was using 10 years ago not still work, right? It's not even that long. Yeah, so I think my illness sort of given me a taste of being an old man, and I'm less old now, but I'm gonna get old, and I want to build towards having a fruitful old age. So there's a lot of directions that goes in, but yeah, I'm evaluating what software I'm using, and I guess if I use only open source, then I can probably use the same things for a while, but who even knows. So I'm not going to count on being able to keep using the same thing for the next 30 years. But it would be nice, if I find something actually good to use. When I'm 70, I don't want to be learning a new set of tools every 5 years. That's not what a person that age is optimized for doing. They can be very effective and very valuable to still have it in the community, but not. There's to some extent, keeping learning new things keeps your neuroplasticity active. I don't want to stop learning new things, right? But you want to keep learning actually new things rather than the same thing but slightly different because some megacorp fucked it up. And have the things that you already learned keep working, right? Yeah. So I've been using the Godot engine, and they just recently brought out version 4, and it doesn't work on my machine yet. Like, it's just throwing a bit of a spanner in my progress because I can keep building this game in version 3, but I've looked at the changes for version 4, and like they're really good changes, and I feel positive about what the team's doing. They're changing things for reasons that make sense to me. Every change I look at, I say, yeah, that actually makes it better, which is not what I usually see in software. So like, I feel really good about that, but I guess I'm waiting patiently for the new version to actually work, because migrating to the new version will mean a bunch of changes. I could keep putting under the old version, but I'm discouraged from doing that because the more I've built, the more will have to be updated. So I was planning to just do a small side project last week before last, and then we all got COVID again, so that was horrible. It remains quite nasty. This time around it was a lot of sneezing, and yeah, I've more or less recovered from that. Still a bit tired. So it was hard, but actually during it I still managed to do some computer work fine, which I wasn't expecting that to work out so well with being sick and exhausted with the kids, but I actually so rather than trying to do something new, which I didn't have the level of togetherness for, I've worked on Zaga-33, which is a game I made I think 11 years ago for the 7-day roguelike, and a few years ago it dropped off the App Store because I didn't keep updating it because they just break things. And so I took a couple of days and rewrote it in Godot, and that was kind of easy, which was nice. Yeah, getting the game itself running was like nice, smooth, really quick. It's a really simple game. The logic of the game is really simple, but it's nice. Always the like things around the core game, like the saving, loading, and options. Like I have less willpower to do, so I get distracted more often while I'm doing it. So I got distracted and prototyped a match-free falling block game, which is kind of nice. Like, it's an oversaturated genre, and yeah, I'm not sure if I'm really adding anything new, but I always just meant to try making one just for a lark, and so I've done that. I don't know if I'll bother polishing up and releasing it. Might just release a prototype, we'll see. Chances are the idea has been done before, because it's a space that's been so explored, and as just a cute idea within that, but I haven't seen it. I've looked around a bit and I haven't seen anyone else has done this take on it, so it's not very like casual, so it might actually not have been done, but like it's not very casual, so it's not going to be big, make me $1 million or whatever. But yeah, so I did that, and then I got back to Zaga a bit, and so back at the time when I was working on Zaga and Glitch Tank and Compendium and all this, I was doing really low level stuff like drawing pixels directly to the screen, generating, sorry, just someone ran past with a dog and stuff. Writing each frame of audio directly to the sound, and I like working at that level. It's like, it feels quite, it's just direct, it feels hands-on, and that's, there are some things you can do efficiently at a low level that become very hard to do at a high level. So in Zaga, some of the sounds are played from wave files, and some of the sounds are synthesized in code, and at that level it's no more, if you're just putting every frame of sound directly into the buffer, it's no more expensive to take that from a file or to just generate it. It's basically the same operation. But if you're in an engine and a high level language, then somewhere underneath it's loading the buffer, and if you want to write a software synthesizer up here, you're putting it into another buffer and then it's sending it down and then it's copying that, so it's just a bunch of extra operations, and suddenly it's slow. Just because that's simply not what the engine's optimized to do. It's, if you want to play sound files, it's great. If you want to run it through effects, they've got a bunch of like any normal effects that any normal person would want to use is there. But my weird glitchy effects I have to write myself, and then they're slow. Or you have to write them natively so that they can be fast, and then you lose the portability. It becomes, yeah, my motivation mainly for using a high level engine is so that it can run on a bunch of different stuff without me having to faff about, and yeah, that kind of low level programming. That's why I didn't just port all these games right away, because they were too close to the metal for that to be just pushing a button. And yeah, that. Now, I don't want to sound like I was doing anything like fancy. Like, I wasn't at the level of like the demo scene stuff. It's just really, really basic, but that was how I was liking to work at the time. And it's a direction I've thought about going further in, like really getting good at the demo scene kind of stuff, but in the end I decided that I'm more about designing the games than programming them. It's just more where I'm interested. So yeah, when I was making Imbroglio, some of the early prototypes of that were in that kind of low-level style, and that was as a really complicated game in terms of design, and I was trying to do really complicated things in terms of pixel washing, and I made the decision to like cut out the technology, and I use a dead simple game programming engine, API, whatever, called Monkey X, which is just like it was originally modeled on a version of Basic, which is what I started programming. It's just like you can have image files, put them on the screen, you can have sound files, play them. You can't do any of that low-level stuff, and like just restricting myself from that like was a strategy to just make the game, which was complicated enough by itself, and that worked. When I think I've mentioned this here before, like it's supposed to support Android, and then when I did press the button to export to Android, it didn't run, and I guess there's probably a way to debug it, but that's the kind of thing that's hard to summon motivation for. Yeah, I've worked on making games by myself for full time, like as my primary occupation for more than 10 years now, and I've been very productive. I've made a lot of cool stuff, and a big thing in having succeeded at doing that is that I manage my motivation, and I usually just have a text document where I've written down all the tasks that need to be done, and I'll work on whichever one I feel most motivated to do. Like usually I'll get up and look at it and it's like, that one I feel excited about working on, and then I can do it. And yeah, if every day I'm working on something I'm excited to do, then I'm happy, I'm working on being productive, and stuff gets done. And often there's a task that I'm not excited to do for a long time, and one day I just like, hey, that one that's been hanging around, I feel like doing it, I want to do it, and then I do it. And if I try to do it on any day before that, it's a grind and I'm procrastinating, but I just wait for the day when I am up for it and it works. If a task goes on for too long without a day like that coming, then usually the problem is it's actually multiple tasks, and so the new task becomes rewrite this task into what it actually is, and then when I rewrite it, it takes up a screen, and I go, okay, that's why I couldn't just sit down and do that one, but this subtask I can do. So yeah, that's an important skill. Break down things into subtasks and do whichever one is exciting to do. If a subtask isn't getting done, break it down further. If you break down everything small enough, you can do it. And really allow yourself to be distracted and set a project aside, work on something else if you're excited to work on that right now. And yeah, so I was excited. Like, Zaga had been sitting around for a few years, and it was just like, I tried figuring out what the problems were to get it back on the App Store. Didn't work. And just suddenly I was excited to, rather than debug it, like completely rewrite it. Why is that easier to do? I don't know, but yeah, I rewrote it, and I haven't tried putting it on my Android phone yet, but hopefully it's just going to go, and so I'll have it back on iOS and hopefully release it on Android before too long. And that's just like getting a good process going for, you know, I wanted to do before, like, really overcommitting to the big project, like go through the whole process for something small, and like, that's what I've done. I found a couple of bugs that have been in there for 10 years, and it's hard to know what to do. Like, it was really nice, like, looking at my old code and seeing, oh, this does this, and seeing how I would write it now. And it was like the monster movement code, how it determines where to go. Just I've gotten better at programming by doing this kind of game for so long, and how I would write this movement code now is much shorter and cleaner and nicer, and it's just nice to look over that. But yeah, one of the enemies, when I rewrote it short and simple, it just stood there, and yeah, the concept was very simple. It just like picked a point on the screen, like a choke point that can see lots in all directions, and goes and stands there and moves to attack the player as the player comes near. But that's not what the behavior of the enemy in the game actually was. The enemy was just like going around unpredictable, and sometimes it would step away from you surprisingly, and sometimes it would not move when it should move, and that was a cool, fun behavior because it was unpredictable. And it was I kind of knew that it was glitchy, but like, you know, I'd just written a bunch of behaviors, like this one seeks you out, this one guards a spot, this one goes in a straight line, this one goes between you and the exit. I just written all these behaviors and then played the game, and the game worked. Like, you know, it was a 7-day roguelike, so it was all done quite fast, and like, it was being fun to interact with these enemies, so I didn't think too much about this surprising, unpredictable behavior from this enemy. It's not something I ever wrote. I was just like, oh yeah, this is the weird guy who goes and yeah, so when I rewrote him simpler, it didn't do anything. He just did what I'd intended. He just stood there until you came close and then attacked it, which was nowhere near as fun to play against as the glitchy version. And yeah, the bug was in computing the distance between 2 points, I'd written x minus y, y minus j, when it should have been, the points are x, y, and ij, so it should have been x minus I, y minus j to get the distances on each axis, but I've written x minus y, I minus j, so the x component was a constant. So the effect of this was that it only cared about, so it's picking a random point and guarding that point, but only cared about guarding that point on one axis. So what it actually did was it went all across the screen at that row, which was way more interesting than guarding a point. It guarded a row and basically kept every turn picking a random place to go in that row. And sometimes that would mean, if there were walls in the middle, it would mean doing a longer path around to get to a different place on that row. And so, like, in the end, it's a simple concept: guard this row rather than guard this point, and that's a better idea than guard the point. But it's not the idea that I had. But that's not quite. If I was writing guard this row, I wouldn't have quite written it like that, because it's a slightly glitchy version where sometimes, because the point it's decided it's guarding in the row is the point that it's actually on, it sometimes doesn't take a step. So it's like width 9, it's got a 1 in 9 chance of not moving and an 8 in 9 chance of trying to go somewhere else in the row, which might be close or far. Yeah, so like that. Yeah, I was always at the time like talking about like glitches and like enjoying that writing low-level code kind of quickly and badly produce unexpected behaviors, and then you can catch those unexpected behaviors and develop them out. And it's interesting going back over it and finding out ways that I'd done this without at the time knowing about it. It's also interesting from the perspective of that I'm working on a thing called Pouch Game now, and it's really, they're both games about item identification, which is, the idea comes from Rogue, and Zaga-33 goes a lot closer to Rogue. Like, you find items, you don't know what they are, you use them once, the effect happens, you find out what it is. But the Rogue designers had the philosophy that you should play kind of carefully and methodically, and so they wanted to discourage just using an unknown item in a risky way, and so they included a bunch of negative, bad items like poisoning yourself or blinding yourself or setting yourself on fire to discourage experimentation. So I guess the idea is that you would safely identify the items and then use them. Of course, sometimes you're in a situation where there's certain death otherwise, so you risk using an unknown item, and that's like the most exciting part of the game. So I think it's more fun to riskily use unknown items. So that's just a difference of philosophical approach. So in Zaga, there are no bad items. There are stronger and weaker ones, and by just having the number of items you get be quite limited, that discourages using them completely recklessly, but it also discourages using them in a situation that's safe to safely identify them. Because they're so limited, you are encouraged to get into a risky situation where you need to use one, and then use one. And hopefully you can arrange it so that multiple of the possible things it could be will save you, not just depend on a 1 in 9 chance coming out. And that works fairly well. There's still, because there are stronger items, like you kind of want to save the strong ones to use in the more difficult situations, so there's still a implicit negative outcome if you use one of them riskily, not knowing what it was, and because then you've used it up. Yeah, I think single patch have done a much better approach to this by having you use the more or less being forced, or like not forced, because you can choose to not use a wand, and sometimes that's the right choice, but having one charge per level so that you sort of want to use them you're encouraged to riskily use them, and it doesn't even cost you anything because it recharges when you go out the door anyway. But at the same time, there's some safe experimentation, but you're not going to. The fact that you only identify the effect when you see it happen, rather than just for free for using it, means that you're forced to use it in like practical situations to identify the practical effects. So, yeah, it's interesting to see, to go back and look at how I was approaching that several years ago, and coming up with gradually better takes on it. One of the I'll talk about this. The most interesting items, I think, are the bomb and the laser, because the bomb gets a 3x3 square radius, the laser does up and across to each wall, on each cardinal direction. And when I was making it, I did these effects played an animation for each of these, and then the enemy's turn would happen straight away. And just playing the game, what I noticed was I'd let off a bomb, an explosion happens around me, monsters move into effect, and the animation for the bomb was still playing while the monster had its turn, because I hadn't delayed it, so I hadn't done anything clever to make the animations, the sequence nicely. It just like, and it just looked weird having the monster in the explosion animation unharmed, because the damage of the explosion happened at the instant that you use it. So I fixed this by making it damage the enemies the next turn as well, which, yeah, I'm pretty... It's like a really little thing that came out of the animation looking a bit glitchy that is actually a really nice mechanic, because you want to look at all the enemies on the screen and make a prediction about where they're going to move and line up your laser or your bomb to catch as many of them as possible. It rewards predicting the position the next turn, not just getting into a good position and recognizing that this turn. And I was meant to do more with that idea. Like, lots of prototypes I've made, I've been bearing this idea in mind, and I've just been like, yeah, maybe generalize it so that you have a variety of attacks, and attacks can, some of your attacks just act instantly, some of them act this turn, next turn, or for a number of turns, you know, or in a number of turns, right? Like, set up a bomb that is going to explode in 10 turns, and try and set up your position so that that's timed exactly when the enemy's going to be there. Yeah, I haven't really used some good possibilities. Yeah, so in the end, like, COVID was horrible again, and I maybe ended up working too much during it rather than resting, so I was pretty tired. Still a bit tired, and yeah, when I was well to go out, I'd been feeling the supplies in the cupboard got a bit low, and I was just like, I don't want to be trapped at home with not enough food. So I went, when I was able to go out, I went straight out and got like a big sack of rice and loaded up my bag with like way too much stuff, and also was carrying the baby on my front, like, trying to be strong when I was like not that strong. Yeah, because I was still in recovery, and so I really like injured my back quite a lot. It's in quite a bit of pain. Yeah, like on Saturday I was like, I couldn't stand up straight. So I've done a lot of yeah. This forest is nice, but it's not so big. And yeah, I was just a little bit distracted because I had some people come through and hearing their voices through the trees. I also found a nice little private spot. And then, yeah, I don't know if it came through on the video, but it just seemed nicer to give them a bit more privacy for what I was hearing. Okay. Yeah, so, like, again, on the theme of thinking about getting old, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm past 30 now, like, I did my back, this is just what I expect now, and yeah, I don't want my expectation of old age to just be like getting more and more crippled. Obviously, it can happen out of your control, and that's just hard. And like you deal with that in whatever way you can. But a lot of older people don't have like one serious injury slowing them down, just like the accumulation of a lot of little things like this. It's like, yeah, I carried too much on my shoulders and my back and pulled something, and then that muscle's still spasming a bit, then everything around that tenses up to compensate, and then everything around that tenses up to compensate. And this is like wonderful. The body has a huge amount of redundancy, that if there's an injury somewhere, everything else is able to work to compensate. But what tends to happen is that the muscles that are compensating for the injury learn their new position as like a new default, and just keep being activated, like out of alignment to adapt, even after the time when it's healed. And I don't know why it works like this. But yeah, you get by the time you've had several small injuries and compensated for them, and then they've healed, but you're still compensating, and you're compensating for the, you get really like hunched over and twisted, and yeah, it just adds up. So I'm working on as much as possible, like having only what's necessary to compensate for the actual injury right now, and keeping awareness on it so that when that can release, then it will, rather than just stay tight for the rest of my life until I'm my hunchback. Yeah, conscious awareness is basically how you disrupt these patterns, because yeah, like the subsystems of the body can just be working in isolation. They're each like doing their best in a local way, and you have to periodically refresh the connection with the whole for them to notice that some of the subsystems are doing work that's no longer necessary. Yeah, so that's... I'm just massaging, actually moving it. Like, there can be a tendency to just like try and power on through and ignore the pain. That doesn't help. But like slow movement, like fighting just to the point where it's starting to hurt, and doing as much movement as possible within that range, and gradually the range gets bigger. Yeah, so I'm fairly confident that this injury will not permanently impair me, because I'm like paying attention to it, but it's annoying, and I'm in a lot of pain at the moment. Yeah, it's frustrating that like I've been incapacitated by the COVID, and then I was reacting to that by like, I don't want to be stuck at home incapacitated without enough food again, so I go get a big bag of supplies, and then in doing that incapacitate myself again. Yeah. Yeah, COVID's bad, guys, and like even when you're like chest is clear and you can like move around and stuff, like it still needs a proper recovery time. Not doing anything too strenuous, and yeah, I think a lot of the like long COVID thing comes from not giving yourself that. I certainly didn't have any kind of break the first time. It was hard, just like having a small child going into lockdown. Like, what can you do? There's not space to just rest and convalesce. So yeah, but at the same time, I'm not just like, I know some people are still really avoiding human contact and trying to minimize their chance of contracting it, and like, that's understandable, it's bad, but I also think like part of what made the recovery so hard is that we need that social contact and like living life. So yeah, I've been going out dancing and going to live music, and like I feel more alive, and that's great. And then yeah, I come down with this, and like, anyone who's still like really isolating, like I applaud you. Like that's hard, and I understand where that comes from. Anyone who's just like, I can't do that, I need to go out and see people and have a life, like absolutely, I sympathize. And I've been having less of a life, but still trying to have some, and like I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Like, I see a lot of people online just like completely know what everyone should do, and just like angry that like they've solved it. They know exactly what everyone should be doing, and they're angry that not everyone is doing what they think everyone should do. It's a hard problem. Okay, wow. Okay, I just looked at the time. Okay, so here's a long video, guys. Thanks.